Hello and welcome to Wilderness Wednesday with Annika. Last week we talked about finding water as a means of survival, and the week before that we talked about shelter. I'll remind you again, the order of survival skills are shelter, water, fire, and food. Fire is important because it helps us to cook our food, keep warm, and boil water. So if we find a water source, it's easier to boil the water to make it safe for us to drink. Fire can also be used in smoke signals so that it's easier for us to be found. And it can give us light in the darkness, which can help us feel less alone and afraid if we're out in the wilderness. Today we'll talk about the aspects of a campfire, the materials we need, and we'll build a fire. Before we get started, there are 3 components you need to start a fire. You need heat, you need oxygen, and you need fuel. And this is the fire triangle. So we can't just build a fire using a big piece of wood. We need different types and sizes of wood in order for the fire to start and stay burning. To start the very bottom of the fire, at the very beginning, you need to have what's called tinder, which is very thin pieces of wood or dried leaves or grass or dryer lint, things like that. Things that'll catch the spark and they'll burn quickly, but they'll transfer the burning onto the next size up, which is kindling. Kindling are bigger twigs and sticks that will catch fire from the tinder and then transfer that onto the bigger pieces of wood. So your kindling can be different sizes. You can have some smaller kindling and then work up to bigger pieces so that your fire burns slowly enough for your final fuel logs to catch fire. Another big thing to note is that all of your fuel for your fire needs to be dry, otherwise it's not going to catch. So your tinder, which is one of the most important aspects of your fire, needs to be completely dry in order to ignite and start the rest of the fire. Your kindling should also be as dry as possible. One way to know if what you're collecting is dry, particularly if it's twigs and sticks, is to break it. And if it cracks like that, then you know that it's nice and dry. If you pull a live branch off of a tree, it's going to be wet. Also, it's not very healthy for the tree, so just stick to picking dry things up from the ground. Grass that is dead and brown, dead leaves on the ground, those are all excellent options for tinder. You can make a type of tinder using a larger fuel log and a good sharp pocket knife of some sort. These pieces of tinder, these wood shavings, will burn a little bit longer and help your kindling to ignite. To safely use a knife, keep your thumb on the blade to have control and hold the handle in your hand. Always move away from you, scrape the wood away from you. It can be helpful to find an edge on the wood that's sticking out and go along that. Keep your feet away and hold the wood steady with your other hand. Then put your blade against the wood and slowly slide down to make nice wood shavings. We're going to talk about 3 different types of fires we can build. The teepee, the lean-to, and the log cabin. The first fire we're going to talk about is a teepee. So you start with your tinder, which I'm just going to break it up a little bit smaller. You set that in the middle of where you want your fire to start. And remember now, you need a little bit of space for air in there so that oxygen can get through every piece, because remember, that's a big part of starting a fire. Okay, and then you'll get this smaller kindling and start building that up almost in a teepee shape around your little nest of tinder. Now it looks pretty messy right now, but as I start to build it up, it'll get better. And I'm going to throw a couple bigger pieces on. Then leaning them up against each other. So see how we get this teepee shape with all our pieces leaning up against each other? Takes a little bit of work to get everything balanced. So now we have our bigger pieces of kindling, and we got to make sure it sticks close enough to the rest of the fire pieces that it's going to ignite. I'm going to try to get some of the smaller parts of the wood at the bottom where it's thinner, because the top part is what will burn longer, the thicker part. Okay, and once those are together, I'll put some more bigger pieces on. Ah! Okay, that happens sometimes. I'm using my ashes around to kind of anchor these pieces in place so that they stay standing a little bit better. Okay, now I can put a couple bigger pieces on it. Remember to still keep spaces for oxygen to flow through. And then you'll keep building bigger pieces on top of this fire, and as they ignite, they'll keep pushing the fire out to the bigger and bigger pieces until you get to your big fuel logs that'll be around the edges. So now that we've talked about how to build a teepee campfire, let's talk about how to build a log cabin. These ones are good because they burn quite hot and long, so they're really good for cooking on, or boiling water especially. So I've laid my tinder in the middle, and I'm putting on my bigger pieces of tinder. That'll burn a bit longer. And again, I want to make a little hole so that I can light right in there. So sometimes I'll do a bit of a teepee style in the center just to get things moving with my small pieces of kindling. Perfect. Okay, and then the reason we call it a log cabin is because we actually start building the outside just like a log cabin pattern goes. And you want to build that kind of around your teepee and with your kindling and your tinder in the center. Now this one does take quite a bit of wood typically, because again, it burns a long time and it burns quite hot. And you continue increasing the sizes of your pieces as you go. Until you're able to use your larger fuel pieces. Now these ones can be a bit more difficult to light, so I tend to build it up a little bit and then start it up. You can even add a little bit more tinder or kindling in there once it's built up a bit. I light it and then I continue adding the bigger pieces on top. But I want to make sure I have enough ready to go before I start it. And that's your log cabin fire. Style of fire we're gonna build is a lean-to. To begin this one, we have one larger piece of fuel log, and we're gonna lean everything up against it. So it's a lean-to, just like that shelter we built. And I'm gonna make my tinder put my tinder, right along the inside edge. Take my shavings as well. And then I'm gonna take my larger pieces of kindling, or my smaller pieces of kindling, and lean them up against my tinder. Just gonna add a little bit more of that tinder in there. Make sure I have enough. Okay. Yeah, so then you just lean all of this stuff up against the edge. This is the one thing, is you want this to be tall enough that there's plenty of air flowing through for the fire to go. So you may even want to stand things up a little, or if you need to put, if you need to put another little piece on top for everything to lean on, you can definitely do that too. As long as you get that general leaning shape, you're pretty good to go. And remember, a fire doesn't always need to be beautiful, so you can just add more things on top if you feel like that's gonna make it easier for it to burn. And I tend to be a rather messy fire builder. I kind of just put stuff in and go for it. If you blow on it and give it oxygen to help it burn, and then you can add more pieces on top. Always watching to make sure there's enough air flowing through. I love a good soup!
You stir it like a witch's cauldron.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I am the witch in brain that turns everyone into bears. Thanks for watching today. Please don't hesitate to post pictures or videos of your wilderness adventures. Next week, you can join me for finding food in the wild. Remember, in God's wilderness, we are set apart, but still together. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thanks be to God. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Hallelujah!